Alright, so today is topic 3, and we are going to be talking about serial killers, as usual, because this is a criminal profiling class. But today we're going to learn a little bit more about men and women as serial killers, because guess what? Just like most other crimes, men and women are different when they kill people, right? So we're not really going to delve too much into why that is. There are many explanations as to why men and women kill differently. Some of them are associated with patriarchy, and that is something for a different class. For instance, we cover that in Criminal Justice 333, Theories of Crime and Victimizations. So, and there's also other classes offered here at SUNY Oswego that cover that. So today we're just going to look at the statistics. But one thing that's very important is, where do we get all these statistics from? Now, I'm not going to go too much into what the Radford Database is because I have uploaded videos to Blackboard about where the Radford Database came from. But essentially, there was a professor at this university in Radford, Virginia, who started collecting myriad information regarding serial killers and started creating this and upkeeping this database. And a lot of the knowledge we have about serial killers comes from this Radford database. The book covers it to some extent, but I have uploaded a video that gives you a much better appreciation of what the Radford database is. But the good thing is it gives us in-depth information about the victims and the killers, and when we look at that data comprehensively, we can pull out certain trends and certain things. And so a lot of the information that we'll be discussing today comes from this Radford database. So we're going to start with men. So one thing when we think about, serial killers in the media, right, we often think they're kind of like Dexter, right? You have your Dexter type of killer, right? It's usually your average serial killer is this sort of brooding, beautiful mind, white guy in his 30s or maybe 40s who's kind of intelligent and, kills a lot of people. But when we look at the actual statistics, we see that, white people are kind of overrepresented in the media when it comes to serial killers. In fact, we find that black serial killers, among other minority groups, do not get the same media attention as white ones. And there are many sort of explanations for it that people have proposed, but we're not entirely sure yet. One reason could be, and this is not the reason, it's not necessarily my reason, it's just a reason that's been given, is that when the majority of people in the United States, especially even 30, 20, 10 years ago, that drive the media are white consumers, and so as such the news and media companies tend to respond to the wants and needs and interests of the white majority in the United States, and as such they get much better ratings when they report on white serial killers compared to others. Now, that could actually be the reason. It also could not, but that has been a reason that's been that has been given for this discrepancy. The average age of a serial killer is right here, in the 30s, and then usually they start getting caught around 38, right? So a lot of serial killers will have some time where they're active, but that is actually a gap that's becoming smaller over time, meaning that serial killers are active for shorter periods. And one real reason for that is that it's easier to get caught these days. In the 70s, the 60s and 70s were a great time for serial killers because you had all this technological innovation occurring, but the police, the state, had not quite caught up yet. And so when it came to evidence, when it came to sharing of police records, right? That was very slow back then, right? The internet was not as widely available. A lot of these databases that the police sort of rely on without even thinking about these days, all of these things didn't really exist or weren't as complete or comprehensive or accessible back then. And as such, now when you kill somebody, you can get caught quite quickly. In fact, a lot of killers get caught within like the first 2-3 days of killing. The biggest reason, or the most popular method of killing among men is guns, right? And that makes sense, right? It's much easier to kill someone with a gun than if you were to strangle them, right? Both from an emotional standpoint, but also from a physical standpoint. I don't know if anyone here has ever strangled anybody, but maybe you've wrestled with someone before, right? If you've maybe wrestled with someone, it takes a lot out of you, especially when you're older and you're not quite in shape anymore, right? When you're wrestling with someone, you burn out quite fast. Now, when you're strangling somebody, right, they're essentially wrestling with you, but they're wrestling for their lives. So you have to apply a lot of strength, a lot of power for a lot longer than you might imagine to kill somebody. And so strangling is a quite, these up close means of killing people is high risk for the killer in terms of successfully completing that kill. But it's also up close, you really see somebody die when you kill them, up close like that. A gun is much less personal. You can stand at a distance, right? You can protect yourself a lot better when you kill somebody with a gun. So, and that's why we see, again, higher levels of guns being used in serial killing. Now, also, a lot of serial killers also become serial killers, not because they're like your typical serial killer, but it's because they are drug dealers who are also killing people, or they are in a gang, right? And those types of killers tend to use guns more often. Also, guns are very accessible these days, especially in states that have the most gun crimes, like in the South, right? That's where you can take advantage of the gun show loophole, where there are fewer regulations on it. So it's just a weapon that makes killing so efficient and easy. And so as such, that is the best way to kill. I mean, even killers like the BTK killer, he always carried a gun on him just in case, and there are some times where he shot people, right? Interestingly, about the BTK killer, when you listen to some of his confessions and stories and whatnot, he talks about how difficult it is to strangle somebody. So that's something to think about. But yeah, guns are the most used method, right? Usually when I think of serial killers, I think of stabbing, right? But they don't even make that much of a they're not even that popular knives. Most male killers kill adults, and they usually tend to target specific types of people, right? And we will cover this, or probably at this point have covered it to some extent. Some killers they just want to kill a certain, these mission-oriented or vision killers, right? They have it out for a certain group. But also there are practical reasons, right? When you're involved in serial killing, a lot of killers are killing for the purpose of just killing. There's not some other instrumental reason, right? And so you are looking at the population that is easiest to get away with killing, right? Back in the day, prostitutes, homeless folks, they were the best victims because these are people who are already low on the public's radar. They're low on the police's radar. When these people go missing, they aren't missed by people for a very long time, right? And so that's why you see this specific targeted victim type often. But unlike regular killers tend to kill people that they know, right? But male serial killers tend to kill strangers. So that's one of the biggest differences. Now, you shouldn't be afraid of strangers necessarily because the odds of you being killed by a serial killer are quite small. But still, that's one thing that's interesting. Typically, we like to victimize people we know, but when it comes to male serial killers, they tend to kill, or they're more likely to kill people that they don't know. They also tend to kill more females than males, but a lot of serial killers have killed sort of both. But for instance, if you consider the BTK killer, right, most of the time that the BTK killer had to kill somebody that was not a female, it was for instrumental reasons or for practical reasons. Meaning, like when he killed his first his first killing was when he popped into a house and there was a family, a whole family, a mom, a dad, a girl, and a boy. And he really only wanted to kill the girl and the mom, but the dad was there, and so he had to kill the dad because he had to get the dad out of the way, right? And so that's why. So even though most serial killers have a particular type of victim that they would prefer, and with men, it's especially females, you see a high percentage of male killers who also killed males. And when we look a little deeper into the data, it tends to be those males are killed for reasons that are not the same as why the females are killed. So again, when it comes to black male killers, we know that they're underrepresented in the media, right? And as a consequence of that, we shouldn't really be upset that these killers are being underrepresented in the media. But when the killers aren't being represented in the media, right, the victims go unnoticed, right? And we find that white serial killers get better ratings. But we are seeing that black or African American male killers are increasing over the last 2 decades, and we're trying to figure out why that is occurring. And oftentimes when we see black on black violence, we don't really discuss those within the context of serial killing. We discuss those within the context of like gang violence and drug dealing, right? And that is an example of this implicit systemic racial bias that still exists, and it even exists in academia, right? And so we have to rise above that and begin to call something what it is. It's serial killing, right? When it comes to male serial killers, there's a subcategory of serial killers, what we call highway killers. Now, these were very popular in the 1970s and 80s. And again, let's think about it, right? So in today's world, we take a lot of things for granted. For instance, interstates, right? Those big old highways, right, that we drive on when we drive from New York City to Oswego or wherever the hell we're driving. We forget that those were not around in the 1960s and 70s, and they were still being built then, okay? Meaning that back in the day, when these were first being built, it opened up a whole new way of victimizing people, right? It's kind of like when the internet came about, it opened up a whole new way for people to victimize other people, right? And so when these highways started being constructed all over the United States, it made it so that one person can go from one place to another a lot faster than before. Moreover, during that time, the automobile became a lot more affordable, and more people were able to travel independently like this. All right? And so back in the day when we had police records and whatnot that were still written on pen and paper, there was no internet or databases to share this stuff, right? Killers realized, oh, okay, so now I have this highway, this stretch of highway that gets me from point A to point B way fast, from one jurisdiction to another jurisdiction way fast. I can kill people along this highway, and almost no one is going to know that I did it, right? And so highway killers were very popular back then, and they're still, around today. But again, it's so much harder to get away with murder now, because there's a lot more video around. Technology is caught up. The police agencies are sharing information with each other now. There's databases that exist. So, but the cool thing about a highway, not really the cool thing, but the interesting thing about highway killers is that they're different from many serial killers because a lot of serial killers like to hunt locally, okay? And this is not necessarily just a serial killing thing, it's a crime thing. Think about when you are smoking marijuana or whatever, right? Everyone has a spot where they go smoke marijuana, right? Or if people are driving around smoking weed, which is a crime, by the way, you don't just drive in a place you've never been, right? Because you're not comfortable there. But people are comfortable committing crime in places that they know like the back of their hand. And the same thing comes with serial killers, right? Think about when you speed, right? When you're driving fast, when you're driving recklessly, right? You're more comfortable driving recklessly in a place where you sort of know or you can anticipate where the cops are going to be, right? Serial killing works the exact same way. Most serial killers like to kill people in areas where they're comfortable. And so the highway killers are an exception to that rule, right? But the same logic still applies to it because the fact that you have this highway, it increases that comfort that you can get away with killing. A lot of these highway killers focus intently on prostitutes. And again, the reason for this is prostitutes typically don't want the police to know who they are, okay? A lot of prostitutes also comprise runaways. So these are people who are not trying to be known by society. So if your job causes you to avoid detection, right? When you are eventually killed and you've tried everything to stay away from being known or being detected by people, well then people aren't going to miss you. People aren't going to be like, where the hell is this person? So the police aren't going to come looking for you. So you are an easy target. Moreover, a lot of prostitutes or many prostitutes operate in these truck stops, right? You might have heard of there's like this I guess it's a discriminatory term for certain prostitutes who hang out at truck stops known as lot lizards. All right, these are typically women who are highly drug addicted. They hang around these truck stops and they offer their services usually for pretty cheap to truckers who are driving across the U.S. or wherever in order to and so when they take a stop at a truck stop, maybe they've been lonely, and so now they can find some service from these truck stop prostitutes, right? And these women are typically, very, very low on the radar. They don't have a lot of people that are going to miss them, and so it's easy to pick one of them up and take them on a drive, kill them, and dump them in a different jurisdiction, maybe even in a different state, right? Now, highway killers, again, like I said earlier, it's becoming more difficult to be a highway killer because there's a lot more video around. There's a lot more sharing of records. Everything is in a computer these days, and so it's easier to access this stuff. So getting away with murder in general is just much more difficult. Another thing that is a misconception that is promulgated by the media is that we typically think that serial killers are these above average intelligence people, but they're really not. Most of your serial killers have a high school degree or less, work some sort of like a trade or like a job that doesn't require formal education. I don't really like using the term like unskilled labor because I don't know. I have a buddy that welds. He didn't go to college, but welding is most certainly a skill, right? And I even worked as a pizza guy for like 8 years, and I can slap out a pizza in a few seconds, and that's a freaking skill because I've seen someone who didn't work at Domino's for 8 years. They can't do that. So I don't like to use the word unskilled labor. But I'll say it's work that doesn't require you to go to college or to have a college degree to get a job. So women are a different type of killer. They only comprise about 8% of all serial killers. Again, a serial killer is someone who's defined as killing 2 or more people. Okay, so because female serial killers make up such a small portion of all serial killers, it's kind of hard to figure out what the typical female serial killer does, right? And so it's even harder for stereotypes to arise. So many women, though, who do kill in some sort of a domestic setting, okay? And so that means they might kill multiple family members, they might kill multiple patients or something like that. A lot of people think that there are way more female serial killers than what statistics show, because these women might actually get away with more killing than men. One explanation can be patriarchy, but another one could be sort of the types of victims they go after. For instance, your angels of death. These are people who work in hospice care, work in nursing homes, or maybe hospitals, who have a unique opportunity to kill people and get away with it. For instance, let's say you work in a hospice care. Okay, this is a situation where people are already dying. They're certain that their death is all but certain. And so you are a nurse in this facility, and you've been instructed to give people morphine on a regular basis, but you're told give them this dose of morphine. Now you might realize, oh wait, what if I give this person 3 times the morphine that I usually do, or I give them more morphine more often? Maybe I can speed up their death, right? Maybe I'm doing them a favor but instead of watching them suffer, right? And when you do that more than 2 times, you are a serial killer, right? So that's what the angels of death do. They would find ways to kill people. Now, in some cases, they might take it a little too far, where there is a strong chance of survival, but they will still sort of manipulate people's care in order to lead to their death, right? There is a great episode of Dexter where his dad's in the hospital, and there's an angel of death that is giving him too much pain meds and slowly bringing about his dad's death. There are far more white female serial killers, but again, there's such a small portion of the known serial killers that we don't really know much, okay? But this is what we know. Many female serial killers are part of a team, okay? Meaning it's like a Bonnie and Clyde type of deal, right? Their average age of their first killing is about 10 years later than men, and several years later for apprehension as well. Women are also more likely to use guns when they kill, but compared to men are far more likely to use some sort of a poison or medication or something to kill people with, right? And this can be because of maybe the stereotypical female jobs, right? Like being a nurse or whatever, or being a stay-at-home mom, right? That adds that creates more opportunity for that. Or it might be that again, maybe the types of people that that these killers go after, poison might be a more suitable means of killing. They're also they focus more. They also focus mostly on adults, but you see a lot more people who are elderly or children compared to the male killers. One thing that's interesting when we look at women as serial killers is when they're killing strangers, they prefer to kill children or patients, right? But when they're killing family, they tend to kill their husbands, and then their children, and then their in-laws. And when it's acquaintances, friends or male dates or suitors, right, before children. So depending on what overall group you're focusing on, the type of victim you'll have will be different. Now we're going to go over in more detail victim selection in a different topic later on. But this is just to give you a quick rundown of what's happening. When we look at the methodology of female killers, one thing that we see is that they tend to use, most serial killers don't just use one method of killing, right? And this is both the case for men and women. And this is because if you are, like, think about when, like, I remember when I first started snowboarding, right? I first tried the regular stance. And I did that, and that was okay. And then I tried the goofy stance, right? And I realized, oh no, that is way different. I'm going back to the regular stance, right? Killing is the same way. Sometimes you might have intentions of killing people one way, but then you're like, oh no, I'm going to try something else. And then you find out as you try different things, what might be the best method for you. And so that's why we see that even though women are far more likely to use poison, okay, they do tend to try other things as well. But compared to men, women are far more likely to use poison for killing. And this, again, female serial killers. All right, so with that being said, keep on reading. I'll see you guys in the next one.